The title of this session this afternoon is How Radio, I Suppose, Survives and Carries On. Some of you may know that on November the 14th, 2012, 5:33, BBC national, local and international radio stations will all come together to mark the 90th anniversary of the BBC. It's an event that we've called Radio Reunited, and it'll be the 21st century version, I suppose, of what happened in 1922, when a few thousand radio enthusiasts, wearing headphones, gathered around their crystal sets as 2LO burst into life, and Arthur Burrows, who was then the director of BBC programmes and was clearly multitasking on that day because he read the news bulletin. And that was the first moment, and radio started to come to life. And I know that today you've heard a lot from Trevor about the events they're doing around the 90th. And also you'll have heard a little bit from earlier on today from Fee and Tony Phillips talking about the Listening Project, which also I think has got resonance in terms of the 90th. I think what's quite interesting, which is also part of Radio Reunited, is they're going to be inviting listeners to record in around 20 words, and I have to say this afternoon I wish I just had 20, to record a message for the future, a bit of wisdom they'd like to pass on. So I suppose what I'd like to do in this particular session is talk about some of the reasons why I think that audio, let's call it audio rather than radio, will survive. Because I think it's a terrific medium. And I think it's terrific for a whole variety of reasons. And some of them actually Jem touched on there. It is a medium that's able to have an emotional connection with its audiences, unlike any other medium. I think also one of the things that, for me, makes it quite unique is its portability. The fact that it's very agile. I know we think we're expensive, but actually, compared to lots of other things, we're relatively cheap, which means we can be agile. And also, I think, in the past, radio has been incredibly brave in just kind of getting on and doing stuff. So this afternoon, I don't have any slides. I'm not going to do any PowerPoint. I have to say I've spent a day of doing that because I've been at an away day. And I feel a little bit like a guest who's arrived at a dinner party and you're on dessert. And you've all bonded and you've heard lots of stuff. I'm not quite sure of what the conversation is, so I sort of feel I'm feeling my way. But here's some of the things that I would say that in order for radio to survive, or audio to survive, you need to do. And it's you who are going to be doing it. Probably not me. It'll be you. And the first limitation I would say never have is never limit your imagination. Because actually, that's the key to the success of audio. That's why 9 out of 10 people still listen to it. That's why people want to interact with it, they want to tweet, all those various things. They engage in a very real sense with radio. Heard about interactivity? Yes, that's important, but also is that sort of active engagement. You're listening to the output, and you want to pick up the phone. You want to really connect with what's going on. But there are certain things that I think we have a kit of parts now in audio that you can use and you can really take to move us into a completely different level. And that's what I suppose I want to touch on today. The first thing I think that's, it's not necessarily unique to audio, but it's one of the things that we've always had, is we're incredibly portable. You know, multitasking and doing things as you go along, audio's been doing that for years. You take it into the garden, you're doing the washing up. Very often there's another activity that's going on. So it forms the soundtrack of your life almost. It certainly forms the soundtrack of mine. I never look at the clock in the morning. I know exactly what time it is by what's actually on the output. That's how sad I am and how routine my life is. But the reason for mentioning that is I think what new technology gives you in the digital age, it actually enables you to be even more portable than you were previously. I have a friend who downloaded the entire series of History of the World. She has a 3-year-old daughter. And I said, well, why have you done that? She said, I've done it for Victoria. I said, well, why is Victoria going to be interested in history and objects in the future? She said, I don't know, but just in case. I've got a record there that she can just refer to. I'm establishing her audio library. In our time, which is one of the most successful archives we've got. One of the reasons for that is lots of people dip into the In Our Time archive on Radio 4 to find out whether they want to buy the book of the academic. So you want all that content there. You want it well curated, and you want it to be really, really simple. There are other things, of course, about audio that's great, and about its portability, and this in a very old-fashioned sense. And I was in Cornwall a couple of years ago, and I was walking. I stopped to have a cup of tea, looking over a beautiful beach, and there was a family, a dad and his son, playing cricket. And the son was really happy. And the rest of the family were looking after the little baby. You could imagine the scene. Little boy had been king for quite some time. New child arrived, not very happy, but getting lots of attention from dad. So all was fine for that moment. And then after about sort of 10 minutes or so, the dad turned to the boy and said, "Come on, time." So they both disappeared off into the car. And I suddenly realised it was the Grand National. And the dad didn't want to miss out on the Grand National, and the son didn't want to miss out on being his dad. And they had one of those unique experiences. They were listening live, they were together. They emerged from the car. The dad was really happy because, of course, the portability of the output meant he hadn't missed any of the Grand National, and the son was really happy because he'd had this shared moment with dad. And that's one of the unique things I feel that audio can give you. And what I think, and you'll have heard a lot about it today, the new technology, the digital world can give you, it can really enable you to max out on that. And that's the challenge, I think, for us to ensure that 9 out of 10 people still feel relevant in 90 years' time. I think the other thing that moment struck me, and it's about the sort of emotional connection that radio has. And I sort of feel this quite keenly, and it's quite a unique role that presenters have in all our lives. Who can remember the first person they heard on the radio who they really connected? Was it a breakfast show presenter, possibly? Yeah? Come on, it's radio, you've got to make a noise. Yes, good, well done. And they were your friends, weren't they? They felt like they were the cool ones in the playground you really wanted to be friends with. I can remember, I grew up, as you can probably tell by my grey hair, listening to the likes of Annie Nightingale, listening to the likes of John Peel, listening to the likes of Janice Long, also listening to the likes, and this will date me, Johnny Walker. And they were the cool people in the playground. They had all the latest records, all the latest tunes. They gave me an insight into a world that growing up in Liverpool and Derbyshire, I had no access to. So for me, they were incredibly important people. And I completely understood when last week, or the other week rather, when Chris Moores left, and that sort of outpouring of emotion, the reason why all those people texted in, because he was their friend. My niece, when he left, was clearly devastated. And I could have taken that in two ways, which was, you're too old for Radio 1, which he's not, or, well, maybe he's had his moment. But she was absolutely devastated because for her, he was the sort of person she wanted to spend her time with. He absolutely epitomised what she felt she wanted to listen to in the morning. And she was bereft. Now, she's getting used to the new one, and it will take time, and I can see a whole new generation will come in. But that connection we have with presenters is like no other medium. There was a broadcaster, and I know you can listen to him online, and if you ever get an opportunity, it's worthwhile doing. It's a chap called Ray Moore. And he used to be a broadcaster on Radio 2. He used to present very early in the morning and late at night. And he had two voices. This shows what the BBC used to be like. There was the Liverpudlian voice, which he was allowed to use on his Radio 2 show. And then there was the official BBC voice in those days, which he used when he was hosting something called Miss World. That puts a year on it. And I remember listening to him on the radio. I discovered him by chance. And he described to me Piccadilly in London, a place I'd never been to at the time, what Piccadilly looked like in the rain and the neon lights shining in the rain. And he was able to completely capture my imagination and mind, just with a few simple words. I also remember him doing a link one morning, and it sounds sort of cheesy. And I suppose some things about live radio, you have to be there in the moment. But he was reading a stack of dedications, and one was from an elderly lady, and it went something along the lines of, I always listen to you in bed in the morning when I'm eating my toast. And he just said, well, hutch up, because you're dropping crumbs on my side. And you knew he connected with her as a listener. Just the power of words and friendship. And that's what great presenters, whoever they are, that's what they're able to do. The other thing I think about audio, which is so important, and that's presenters who curate for you. And we've got stacks of them in music radio. People that probably come to my mind, I mean, these days I probably refer to people like Zane Lowe. I look at the specialist music shows on Radio 2. I look a lot at what also goes on stations like Absolute and commercial radio. And I often think about Peel. And, you know, the great thing about John Peel was he used to listen through to everything, so you got the best. He curated it for you. And I was talking to Jem about this before I came on stage this afternoon. And we were talking about social media and Twitter. And I was listening to Radio Merseyside last year during the time of the riots. And there was quite a sort of strange moment when the station, they went on air in the wee small hours of the morning because they felt it was a really important event for the city. And the only way they could really cover it was to go in there and to be live. So they broke in, they went on air. And it was a caller. He came on air and they said to the presenter, I'm afraid I can't remember the presenter's name, but it was to the lines of, I'm so glad you're there because I've been following the events on Twitter. But knowing you're there is really good because I now feel it is all real. And what that presenter almost wanted, and I think it sort of demonstrated perfectly the sort of interaction between, if you like, new media, old media, was he wanted the immediacy, he wanted to know what was happening, but he also wanted curation too, and someone to be able to take some of those themes that are emerging on Twitter and explain what was happening in the broader city. And that's when you get it right, that can be so incredibly powerful. The other thing I think about radio, which again is incredibly important, is we have to be agile and seize opportunities as and when they present themselves. And I can see from the agenda today, a lot of you are really engaged with that. And that's something I think that audio has always done. There was a programme which some of you may have heard called Any Questions, goes out on Radio 4. I think it started in 1956. It actually started completely by chance. What happened was they were planning to run a quiz show, but the presenter pulled out at the last moment. So they thought, I know what we'll do. We'll get 4 people of influence, and we'll tour them around the southwest, and we'll get members of the public to ask them questions. Simple format, worked quite well for 6 weeks. Then somebody said, it's not going so badly, we'll keep it going. And then I think it was in 1958, it went nationwide, and it's been going ever since. And the interesting thing there, and this is quite important for sort of established programs like Any Questions, you work on a kind of, the language now, you work on an established brand, it's kind of, well, you know, everything's fine, do I need to do any more? Well, actually you do, because that's when the real danger is, because you've got to start or keep looking for possible new developments, new ways you can actually develop your output and develop and deepen your connections with the audience. And when Any Questions started, they used to have letters. Now they have a phone-in. They didn't start that until about the 1980s. Now they have Twitter. And so with those big landmark series, you've got like Any Questions, what you have to do there, as they've done with Desert Island Disc, is look for the new opportunities. How can technology, how can the digital age enable you to deepen the connection and also give you something new to talk about in terms of your audience? And I think that's quite important. The other thing about audio is it can potentially really change the world. And that's a very, very bold statement to make, but I'll give you one example. Many years ago, and I wasn't there at the time, but I used to work at Radio 1 doing social action campaigns. And one of the examples we always used to give about the power of social action campaigns, and it's as real now as it always was they did a drugs campaign back in the, would have been late 70s. And they found they were getting a lot of queries from drug users who were sharing needles, which was putting them at risk of HIV. That campaign led to the setting up of the National AIDS Helpline, and it's been running ever since. So radio really can be incredibly powerful. It can, literally, and it has in this particular case, save lives. The other thing I think that audio always needs to keep doing is keep pushing it and keep pushing the boundaries. Because we are, and we should be realistic here, yes, we're expensive, but we're not that expensive. Our only real limits are in here. And people who say to me, oh, I can't do that because the way we've always done it is, drive me absolutely up the wall. We should always be open to new ideas and new possibilities. That's why, in terms of comedy, you've spawned things like Little Britain, Goodness Gracious Me, even in years gone by, The Goons. They all started there. Somebody took a punt, they took a risk, and that's what happened. And the final thing I'd like to say, because I can see the clock ticking by, and I know what they're like, they'll kick me off. I've got the chair, is the only thing that limits the future of radio and the future of its flexibility is actually you in this room. If you ever reach the stage where you start saying to people, but the way we've always done things is, what our audience like? How do you know? Push yourself. Keep pushing yourself. I walk into work every day and I think I am incredibly lucky. I get to listen to great output. I get to work with wonderful, amazing, terribly creative people. What's not to like? So let's give listeners, audiences, wherever they are, however they consume us, the best possible time. And that's how we'll survive.
I can't believe that we've been here for about 2.5, 3 hours, and we've talked about 12 or 13 completely distinct things. The format is great, and I'm just really pleased with it. It hammers through loads of different things. You can barely keep up. It's a bit relentless, but in a good way.
It's been a great day. Lots of good people to talk to, lots of good people to listen to, and learn lots of good things.